You've probably heard this phrase floating around lately, especially coming out of China: we got old before we got rich. In this explainer, we're going to unpack what that really means. Because you see, it's not just some clever saying, it's a demographic time bomb that's starting to go off, and it's shaking the very foundations of the world's second biggest economy. Over the past year or so, you can't really escape the headlines about China's economy. And they haven't just been bad, they've been pretty alarming. It really feels like the world's unstoppable economic engine is starting to sputter. You've definitely seen the symptoms flashing across your news feed. First, there's the massive real estate collapse. Giants like Evergrande defaulting and entire construction sites just turning into ghost towns. Then you've got slowing GDP growth, sparking fears of a really long, painful recession. And on top of that, big companies like Apple and Samsung are actively pulling their investments and supply chains out of the country. So the big question is this just a normal downturn, or is there something much, much deeper going on here? What if all those economic problems, the housing crisis, the slowing growth, what if they aren't the disease itself, but just the symptoms? Well, that brings us to the real story, the demographic diagnosis. See, the real issue here isn't just a bad market cycle or a few policy mistakes. It's a deep structural crisis that's been brewing for decades. China's population is shrinking and aging at an absolutely alarming rate. You can try to fix a recession with stimulus packages and government spending, sure, but trying to reverse a demographic collapse, that is a whole different ballgame. To really wrap your head around the scale of what's happening, we need to look at the hard numbers. And honestly, they are just staggering. Just take a look at this. For the first time since 1961, think about that. China's population is officially shrinking. In 2023 alone, the country had a net loss of over 2 million people. And what's driving this? A fertility rate that has just plummeted to 1.0. Now, to keep a population stable, you need a rate of 2.1. So 1.0 isn't just low, it's one of the lowest in the entire world, even lower than famously aging societies like Japan. And while the number of young people is falling off a cliff, the number of seniors is exploding. Right now, there are 310 million Chinese citizens over the age of 60. To put that into perspective for you, that one group of people is larger than the entire population of the United States. Now, this is where you can really see how lopsided things are getting. Just look at the difference on this chart. The senior population is rocketing up by 25%, while the youth population is, well, it's basically flat. This means China isn't just getting older, it's aging at a speed that we have never seen before in modern history. And if you think that's bad, the long-term forecast is even more jaw-dropping. Projections suggest that by the year 2100, China's population could fall so far that it lands right back where it was in 1950, a full century of population growth completely erased. So, the big question is, how on earth did a country of 1.4 billion people get to this point? Well, the story really starts with one single infamous policy that completely changed the shape of the Chinese family. Yep, we're talking about the one-child policy. From 1980 all the way to 2015, the government strictly enforced this rule to control population growth. And even though the policy is gone, its legacy is permanent. It didn't just limit births, it created an entire society where the idea of a single-child family is now the cultural norm, an ideal that's so deeply embedded that people stick to it even without the government forcing them. So why didn't things just bounce back after the policy ended? Because a whole new set of modern pressures moved in to take its place. Young people in China today face absolutely crushing education costs, housing prices in big cities that are just completely unaffordable, and intense career pressure that has pushed the average age of marriage from 24 to over 28 in just the last decade. And this quote really just sums it all up perfectly. For an entire generation of young professionals, the economic reality on the ground has made having a family feel like a luxury they simply can't afford. And you can bet the government is now desperately trying to put the genie back in the bottle. I mean, they've tried everything. First, a 2-child policy, then a 3-child policy. They've offered cash handouts, free IVF, and plastered pro-birth propaganda everywhere. And the result? Absolutely nothing is working. It's a tough lesson. Once a society adopts that low fertility mindset, it seems almost impossible to turn the ship around. Now, this isn't just a domestic problem for China. Let's be clear. A demographic crisis in an economy this massive is guaranteed to send huge ripples across the entire globe. You can literally watch the dominoes fall. Fewer young people means fewer people buying homes, so the housing market collapses. An aging population tends to save more and spend less, so domestic consumption dries up. And finally, with way fewer workers trying to support a giant pool of retirees, the pension and healthcare systems get stretched to the breaking point. This is creating what they call the 4-2-1 problem, where a single child might be responsible for two parents and four grandparents. So why should this matter to you, wherever you are in the world? Well, because China accounts for a massive 17% of the entire global economy. A deep structural slowdown there isn't just a local problem, it's like a giant anchor dragging on global growth for every single one of us. And we're already seeing the fallout from this. As the world's factory starts to run out of young workers, its biggest advantage, cheap labor, is disappearing. So what's happening? Big corporations are de-risking and shifting their production lines to new hubs like Vietnam, Mexico, and India. It's a massive realignment of global supply chains happening right before our eyes. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? When you zoom out, China's story becomes a really powerful cautionary tale, not just for itself, but for the entire world. This picture says it all. On the left, you see China's population pyramid. It's top-heavy and unstable. Way too many old people, not nearly enough young people to support them. But on the right, you have India, a classic bottom-heavy pyramid with a huge youth population. This is what economists call the demographic dividend, a golden window of economic opportunity that is now slamming shut for China. And that brings us to the ultimate lesson here. For decades, everyone was focused on China's brilliant economic policies as the driver of its incredible rise. But the reality is, demography was the real engine all along. A large, youthful workforce is an incredible economic gift. But China's story teaches us that if that gift isn't used wisely, it inevitably flips and becomes a crushing demographic liability. Which leaves us with one last crucial question. China's crisis proves that a demographic dividend doesn't last forever. It's just a temporary window. So as other nations like India enter their own golden window, will they learn from China's mistakes? Will they manage to get rich before they get old? That really remains to be seen.